Thank you, Melissa, and thank you to our previous panelists. AI and complex data analytics are pushing the frontiers of medical research and diagnostics, all the while improving treatment and detection of the disease within patients. During this panel, we'll discuss how new methodologies are leading to better patient outcomes, as well as how data analytics are allowing for better insights into complex medical conditions. We have an exciting panel of experts who will provide us with further insight into these emerging and fascinating research and diagnostic areas. Joining us today, we have Dr. Gil Alterovitz, the Director of National Artificial Intelligence Institute at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and Dr. Moshe Levi, a Professor of Biochemistry in the Department of Molecular and Cellular Biology at Georgetown University. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
So I want to start with a question for both of you. What is top of mind at your organizations in regards to AI and data analytics for research? Dr. Levi, I'll begin with you.
So regarding AI at Georgetown, we're getting organized. We have a number of people who are already working on it. Part of the application is more basic science oriented, where we analyze data sets, gene arrays such as RNA-seq, proteomics, metabolomics. Then those are from basic research models are extended to patient samples. And the idea is to pull together all the data sets and come up with pathways that can be targeted for treatment. In addition, there is also a component of AI being applied, and I'm involved with that with other universities to look at analyze biopsies, for example, different histological stains, etc., to make specific diagnoses that can be easily missed by the simple eye. And then eventually we want to couple that to the other data set. And finally, something that's been going on for a while is application of AI in radiology, for example, CAT scans, MRIs, and trying to diagnose lesions, tumors, for example, that are easily missed by the eye.
Fascinating. Gil, what's top of mind at your organization?
Yes, so there's a number of different applications and kind of frameworks that are being developed that can be applied to that. So I want to really first echo a number of the different application areas that Dr. Levi was mentioning. We've been looking at a number of those and applying them specifically to the veteran population. So sometimes work that it happens outside the VA, whether it be, Georgetown or other universities, we can apply that to a veteran population using techniques such as transfer learning and so forth. But at the same time, we have to be really mindful and ensure that we look at and ensure that we're leveraging kind of concepts of trustworthy AI. There was actually recently an executive order on promoting the use of trustworthy AI and looking at a number of things relative to making sure that it's not only performance driven, but also is understandable, responsible and traceable, regularly monitored and transparent, things like that, and accountable. And so we're working to ensure that that framework it takes place and is utilized in all the different applications and evaluating them. And if it doesn't fit within that kind of minimum bar framework, then those use cases basically would not take place, right? And so there's kind of that analysis of the cost benefit, and there, and it really has kind of different points. So if you look at the diagnostic applications, or you may look at screening, where other people then look at additional piece of information, it's one thing, but if it's something that it may be a therapeutic that could, have a toxic result. It may need a different level. So in terms of a few exciting applications, just very briefly, I think one is around looking at lung cancer, prostate cancer, precision oncology has a lot of opportunities. Imaging is an area that really is really enabled by a lot of the deep learning approaches. We've got researchers who are focusing on how do you represent that information in a way that can be optimally used within artificial intelligence, making that AI-ready data. We've got investigators who are applying existing methods to just the large data sets that are available within the VA. So there's really kind of that wide range of applications from kind of fundamental ones to and developments all the way to kind of applied technologies and using it in operations.
Outstanding. That leads me actually as a good segue into my next question, which is what are some of the complex medical conditions your organizations are looking at right now, and how are you using data insights to improve patient outcomes? Gil, the VA has the largest genomic database in the world for healthcare information. Can you talk about how you're leveraging that?
Right. So that's an exciting kind of resource that the veterans have essentially provided and made available for the VA to help in a number of different conditions of importance to veterans and so what it involves the Million Veteran program basically is where veterans will basically donate a genomic sample, a sample where the genomics is done, and that can then be linked to their medical record information and any other information that that is made available, maybe whether it be surveys and other labs and so forth. And so that is all collected, and then there's different programs to enable research to be done with that. So for example, there's a collaborative program, the MVP Champion and other programs that work together to enable the analysis of that. So for example, in the MVP Champion program, there's a collaboration with the Department of Energy to leverage their supercomputing capabilities. And there are 3 pilots around that, including prostate cancer and a couple others that basically leverage and combine the expertise and computing within the Department of Energy and the clinical expertise, the computing kind of knowledge and so forth that's available within the VA as well, putting those together to come up with new algorithms and ways to bring that to care for the actual patients.
Dr. Levy, the same question for you. What are some of the complex medical conditions your organization is looking at right now?
So to go along with what Gil was saying, for example, taking cancer as an example, it's being leveraged for both identifying pathways that are involved that can be targeted and extending all the way to the concept of personalized medicine, depending on the pathways that are involved, the specific patients, any kind of genomic or related data, either from gene analysis from the tumor to biomarkers in the serum, and trying to come up with the best treatment modalities, and then use the further data that's used in a feedback mechanism to determine if the predictions are correct and if it makes any difference to the different treatment modalities that are used. So the application in cancer is tremendous, but it's slowly diffusing in the other areas, like into the neurosciences, cognitive dysfunction, Alzheimer's disease specifically.
Fascinating stuff. Gil, for a while now, the VA has been working on AI tools to predict mortality rates and a framework to integrate R&D modules into clinical systems. How's the progress on that been going? And has there been any impact in these efforts because of COVID-19?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've got the AI to go and to point of care system where our goal is to basically enable trustworthy AI, essentially. So enabling all the different parts where you have methods that come from research to actually be leveraged in practice. And so you need to make sure that it involves trustworthy AI. You need to make sure that clinicians can understand and would like to adopt the algorithms to get their input and have that iterative process. And so we found actually that it was really interesting in COVID. It actually made things move faster because it was a use case that really presented an immediate need, right? So let's say, a surge is happening in a particular location or across multiple locations. There's that need to essentially pilot and leverage such systems so that you can get things used more quickly. And so COVID has actually increased and allowed us to learn about new processes and new ways to move faster in terms of getting work from research into practice. So that's really been interesting. Specifically, actually, with one of the COVID modules, that one's now being piloted and led to a couple of interesting findings and uses that where the clinicians and the people that were looking at that in terms of operational uses were able to leverage it in ways that they had not planned, and they communicated that then to other clinicians, and essentially that kind of spread through the network. And so really there's a lot of new ways of thinking that are coming about from this approach that COVID has really enabled people to think in new ways. And it's really, in that sense, something that I think will carry forward into the future, kind of a new way of thinking about processes where clinicians, researchers are working together in this iterative way so that for the benefit of the veterans.
I want to stay on the topic of COVID-19, and this one is for you, Dr. Levi. We've been able to figure out a lot about certain trends and pre-existing health conditions that are correlated to higher complication rates in COVID-19, such as obesity and age. Can you explain how data has played a role in your findings behind this, and generally what information you've discovered throughout the pandemic in your R&D?
So as COVID started spreading out, it became clear the conditions you mentioned, obesity, diabetes, and aging, were major risk factors. And so going along the lines of the cytokine storm or accelerated inflammatory stage, we started accessing data sets that were available actually from SARS-CoV-2 infected cell lines and later biospecimens. And we identified pathways that went along with our basic research with those models. We happened to be researching in my lab the effects of obesity, diabetes, and aging, for example, in the kidney and other organs, but mainly kidney. And we identify a pathway that was similarly upregulated following COVID-19 infection that was already activated without infection under those conditions. So we have, started going after those pathways. We don't have the data yet because we have to do intervention studies to prove whether our predictions are correct or not. But that was very helpful in coming with, because it was not clear, sometimes you see associations without necessarily any cellular mechanisms, but in this case, we had some leads that we were following for the pulmonary complications and GI, renal complications, vascular complications. We're actively working with 4 institutions in our area: Virginia Tech, ourselves, Johns Hopkins, and a lot of bioinformatics.
That leads, did you want to add something to that, Gil, or?
No, I was just basically nodding in agreement. I think that's really it's really interesting that all these fields sort of come together when you think about it. There are a number of ways that, AI, can be leveraged in bioinformatics, as Dr. Levi was saying, and kind of vice versa in terms of representations of data that can help AI. So it's kind of a synergistic ecosystem in some way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads into the next question as well. One area we've been seeing across the board in health is the increasing incorporation of data capabilities and access to researchers to help further health and medical research. In what ways do you see this happening, and where is there room for improvement? Gil, I'll shoot that one over to you.
Yeah, right. So there's a lot of different capabilities where you're really increasing the incorporation of the data capabilities, and that it's really important to look at the different ways of doing that, right? So the access, the researchers need access to the data. The data need to essentially have access to the researchers to be leveraged. I think when in terms of room for improvement, there's really a need to think of different ways that the data would be used. Different data have different ways that they can be leveraged and made AI ready. They can have different representations. They can be encapsulated in different types of standardized modeling approaches. And for different types of problems, they need to be kind of mapped in different ways. And so that's an area that I think kind of needs potentially further development, and also could be really useful, because if you had harmonization, you could share not only across different research areas, but also across different departments and so forth, to make that available and useful for a healthcare, so that research is then useful for a healthcare setting. I think that would be the main thing that would really help in improving that moving forward.
Dr. Levi, it sounds like you're doing some of this already with the consortium of universities that you just described, but in terms of how we can further help in medical research, what ways, in addition to how you described, do you see this happening, and where's there room for improvement? What would you like to see next?
Well, so number one has to be awareness. Different schools, different departments, different clinicians, where the patient data is gathered. Number two is to be able to do all the analysis and put it together. And so that's a little bit, it's easier to take one data set, RNA, for example, sequencing and analyzing it. And even there are different software programs that we use. Identify the genetic basis, but we also know that the proteins are very critical. We also know, furthermore, that post-translational, there's modifications of the proteins that really determine their activity. So you can have gene A go up, protein go up, but it can be modified. So there's modifications along the way. And once you start doing that, the data sets are incredibly complex. So it's really beyond of regular, investigators, labs, departments. So it has to be more of what we call, I'm a former engineer, so now all my engineering departments, they call themselves chemical and biological engineering, going into the systems biology, physiology, looking at the whole thing together. So that's going to be the challenge. And also the challenge will be whether we think that whatever artificial intelligence programs that are being used, are they really doing the right thing? I mean, that's going to take a lot of validation. But that's what we need to do, because there's no way for me to look at the data sets. Maybe I can pick up one or two, but not the whole picture together.
Sure. We've been talking a lot about data, but I think the goal of this is to improve patient outcomes.
Yes.
what can we do better to connect data and advanced analytics and AI tools to that mission and improving patient outcomes? Gil?
But patients are very heterogeneous, right?
Yeah.
And so if we look at the average data set, it may or may not apply for a given subject. Even you pick up, diabetes, or you pick up diet, what kind of diet, what kind of exercise, what kind of medications. So we get the average information, but ultimately for more precise medicine, we'll have to plug in the specific subjects, whatever information we have, to come up with some predictions and see how they respond. I can tell you that not everybody responds to blood pressure treatment the same way. So we learned that a long time ago. And there is regional variations, ethnic genetic backgrounds, and then together with precision medicine, you also have to do precision, backgrounds of the patients, their socioeconomic environments. So it's maybe Gil at the VA has a way to deal with that, but.
Yeah, well, thanks, Dr. Levi. I want to also take a different angle and talk about how you connect the data to the advanced analytics, as David was saying. I think it's really, it comes down to a fundamental point, because right now, I think many systems, when you look at them, they actually have two different systems. One that's used for the research setting, the supercomputers, the clusters, and so forth, where you develop the AI models, right? And then there's a different system, which is the one that's used, clinically and so forth, and doesn't have the same analytical capabilities, so there's kind of that dichotomy. And so in the future, there may be a better way to kind of connect these systems. Right now, essentially, usually you build a system in the first one, as I mentioned, a more research-like setting, and you develop the model. And it's true that developing the model does take kind of the most computing generally to actually learn and develop the model. And then you apply the model within the more clinical one, which is, it's much less powerful in terms of computing capabilities, and less power is needed to actually do inference and apply. But going into the future, when we start thinking about iteration and learning continuously and some of those kind of concepts, it's going to be important to have a stronger bridge between the data and the analytical capabilities, both at the research setting where you're originally building it, but then also at the medical setting, and to be able to do those analytics there. And so having either a bridge or having a compatible formats that are easy to transfer between those different settings is going to be useful. And we see that in a number of cases now going on in terms of around trustworthy AI, whether it be FDA with some of their new guidance around software as a medical device for AI that continuously learns, so that it can continue to have approval after it can continue to learn after it gets approval, to systems that receive feedback and integration of new information from clinicians. So there's a number of ways that I think when we think about connecting data to analytics, to think about it in a way that research can have the biggest impact on patient outcomes by thinking about the infrastructure underneath that and connecting those worlds.
I want to stick with you on this one, Gil, and to the point that you were just making. What are some of the tools that are out in the field that you're excited about, that you think that we can be iterating on in a game-changing way to improve the care that is delivered?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there are a number of tools that don't include AI, that I think with AI could really benefit. And some of them, when you think about it, you're talking about delivering care. Some of them really involve things that are not directly related to care, right? They may be, we've seen different offices in the VA working together around, for example, being able to process benefits and forms, or forms for different ways to receive medical care, and different areas where natural language processing can help to translate notes into usable information in a faster way, clinical notes. And so some of these are not actually directly involved in delivering the care itself, but they really provide increased productivity that allows then physicians and others to have more time to spend with the patient, and to or to not use up time on some of the on some of these aspects that maybe are not in their area of expertise, but that they need to do that paperwork and so forth. This helps them have more time to serve as a physician, caregiver, and these other roles to better help the veteran. So I think that's the general type of category of kind of game-changing areas that can help in delivering care. Of course, they're the kind of really exciting ones, whether it be around looking at images for lung cancer with augmented reality and enhanced by artificial intelligence and all that. Those, of course, will have an impact within their field. I feel that some of these other ones that are kind of maybe not seen at the front office kind of setting, but more in the back end, are ones that will actually make the biggest or a really game-changing difference in terms of how care ends up being delivered overall.
I think you make a good point, and so I'll adjust the question a bit for you, Dr. Levi. So zooming out a bit, what are some of the game-changing areas of focus where AI could potentially be incorporated and it have better outcomes and improve the delivery of care? So not just focused on tools, but areas that you think we could, bring the two together and it could be game changing.
Well, I mean, leading on the example of imaging, for example, for me, if you can couple the images that you obtain and are analyzed in a sophisticated manner from MRIs or CAT scans to actually, the biopsies and what they indicate when you do gene analysis, etc., and see if there's a way, put those information together in a way that forward going, the MRI image will correlate to actually what's happening within the tumor. That will be incredible if we can do that. That's just one example. We're doing this for kidney biopsies, imaging the kidney biopsies and imaging the analysis, molecular analysis, and see how we can correlate those. That's the ultimate.
That's great. Well, we're out of time, and I want to thank both of you for joining us today on this fantastic panel. Thank you all again, and I'll pass it off to our next panel, AI and Advanced Data Analytics for National Security.
Thanks for having us.